Good morning. Welcome to the Friendly Moms Club podcast. I'm Jen.
I'm Karlee, and we're the new mom friends you didn't know you needed. Well, happy Mom Day, Jen.
Happy Mom Day, Karlee.
What a beautiful day out. We
I
got
know.
Sunshine. Finally. We're here.
Jinx. Wow, I'm on the same page.
We are on the same wavelength.
I feel like the sun makes me think I'm happier than I am, though.
Oh, like a little fakeness. Have you actually heard about in Vancouver, people joke that we get seasonal amnesia? Like we forget how bad the winters are. They're not cold, they're just dreary. And then come summertime, everyone's like, Vancouver's the best city ever. But in the winter, everyone's like, boo.
No, I haven't heard that, but it actually makes sense.
Seasonal amnesia.
Okay. I don't mind a little rain. I don't mind a little cold. A nice fall where you get to wear sweaters and scarves. I kind of like that.
I do like it when it's crisp, but I don't like rain.
Okay, that's fair. Then maybe you shouldn't live in Vancouver.
I know. Vancouver.
I know. Nah.
Yeah. So tell me about your day. Tell me about your life.
Life's rough.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, in case anyone falsely believes this, life is not all sunshine and rainbows with having babies at home. It is hard, and we don't ever want to give the example. Like, we don't ever want to make you believe that we are like these great parents that have great babies at home and we are just killing it because
we cry.
I cried all weekend. My baby was crying. I was crying.
Your baby, little Jojo, is really, really testing her. I would say for like a month now.
It is. It's been rough.
She's not even 8 months and she has like 17 teeth. So
Yes, it's unreal. And she's just been crying a lot and really unhappy. But I did have a mom win of the day that yesterday she had one wake window where she didn't cry.
That's clap. Everybody clap for Jojo.
That is freaking
That's
huge.
impressive.
She cries just so much. So to actually have a couple hours stretch, like it was 2 hours where she didn't cry. I could change her diaper. She didn't cry.
That's
and
a win.
She played and didn't cry. Like,
that's big. That's big.
Anyways, so it's really rough, but that was my
high five to Jen and Jojo.
Yeah, thank you. What about you?
Yeah, Henry is also going through a little bit of like a grumpy old man phase. He had a couple teeth come in and he's got a couple more that are like trying to come in, and then he got his first snotty nose, which I don't like mucus, so it's been very hard for me. I used the snot sucker for the first time. Let's just say neither of us loved it.
Yeah, it's needed though. That little snot sucker works. It is disgusting, but it works.
I was like gaggy and I was like, like brought me back to pregnancy actually.
Okay, but to be clear, the snot doesn't actually go in your mouth. Let's
No.
just for anyone who doesn't actually know, like you suck it out, but there's a filter. So it's not going into your mouth. That's a very important thing.
But the whole thing where you're sucking and you're watching it come out and you're like, I'm doing this, and it's not anywhere near your mouth, but just like, I don't like snot on a good day, so.
But it's from your baby. I thought everything from your baby was cute, and you're supposed to love it.
You should see his poops these days. Not cute. Speaking of poops, I just dropped him off at Grandma's, and he hasn't had his morning poop yet. So, Grandma, I hope you're doing okay.
I'm sure she will be just fine.
Yeah.
Thank goodness for grandparents.
Ugh, bless them.
So today we are going to be talking about mental health in trying to conceive and in pregnancy.
Yeah, because your mental health gets challenged. Ours did. And yeah, it can be a very mentally straining time for a lot of people. And
there's a lot of like negative thought processes that can come up when you are trying to conceive and getting pregnant and being pregnant. Like there's just these things that your mind almost plays tricks on you.
I was going to say your brain tries to trick you into thinking that all of these lies.
Yeah. So we want to go through a few and just kind of identify them and go through what they are, maybe give some examples from what we experienced. Because sometimes it helps when you can just identify what's going on. For me, it made me feel less like crazy is a bad term to use, but it made me feel less crazy. Like I just was like, okay, this actually makes sense, like scientific sense, what's going on in my brain right now and how I'm jumping from here to here to here. Like I liked being able to identify what it was that's going on. And this is something that is researched and there's scholarly articles and papers written, like this is true. Like these things do happen and they are legitimate like mental health concerns that happen. So
and you can so everybody knows about postpartum depression. There's also postpartum anxiety, postpartum psychosis. But what people don't talk about a lot is that you can actually be diagnosed with like prenatal depression or anxiety during pregnancy. So everyone thinks they have to wait until they have the baby to actually have those issues. But no, I struggled with prenatal depression and anxiety. I already had struggled with it, but it was like exacerbated during pregnancy, and I didn't recognize it until it was too late, which we talked about in our previous episode on pregnancy. So it's a very challenging time for some people, and there's so many different scenarios that can kind of make things harder for you. So if you're struggling with infertility, if you're in an unstable relationship or unstable job, if you are really sick when you're pregnant,
or if you got pregnant and it wasn't planned.
Yeah, it wasn't planned.
Secondary infertility. Maybe you had one kid, you decide you want to try for another, and now you can't get pregnant.
Yeah, if you've had previous losses, either pregnancy related or just even in your life, if you've struggled with loss.
Just any trauma, previous trauma in your life can really come forward when you're trying to conceive, or you, and this comes up this starts just when you even think about like, okay, maybe we're going to start trying. Like this starts very early. It's not like you have to have been trying for a year for these mental health kind of challenges to come up. They start right away. And it's just good to identify what's going on and really think about it.
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
So yeah, your personal experiences in your life, they really affect your ability to not only cope, but also they can change your experience when you're trying to conceive or when you're pregnant. And I just want to say all your feelings are valid. So even if you haven't been trying for a long time, if you aren't actually diagnosed with infertility, if you haven't had any losses, but you're still really struggling, like those feelings are all still very valid. I'm very sorry if you are dealing with infertility or you've had pregnancy losses, but even if you haven't had that, it's still okay to be struggling.
Yep. It is really mentally very challenging, and it wears on you a lot. And it wears on your relationship too. I think that society tells us, like, since, I don't know, you're in grade 6, I think you have the sex talk. Like, you have unprotected sex once you were going to get pregnant. So you grow up thinking it's going to happen. Like, as soon as I want to have a baby, I'm going to be able to have a baby. And I think that really sets a bad precedent in your head. Really have this expectation that you were going to have unprotected sex once, and boom, you're going to be pregnant, and it's going to be magical, and all the other stuff that we've talked about in previous episodes. But so when that doesn't happen for people, they already feel let down. And then that starts you off on like a negative start to the process.
Definitely. And some people have dreamt about being pregnant, being a parent for their whole lives. Some people, it's just like their life purpose. And then when it doesn't happen right away, it's hard. It's very hard. That wasn't even, I've always wanted to be a mom, but it was never like this deep, like I have to have children right away. Like I waited till I was in my mid 30s and it still was very hard when I wasn't getting pregnant. So I can only imagine how difficult it is if you've been waiting your whole life to be a parent or a mom and have a baby and it's just not happening. Very difficult.
Yeah. I think we underestimate a lot that the toll that trying to conceive actually has on us. And I don't think society recognizes it enough. And we're starting to talk about it more now than we ever used to before. Like infertility is now a topic that people sometimes will bring up, and they maybe sometimes will share their experiences. But 5-10 years ago, that wasn't the case. And so I think it's good to recognize just how hard that is. And there's certain things that are helpful and not helpful, and asking your friends all the time, when are you going to have kids? They might have been trying for years, right? And so then when you ask these questions, they're like, yeah, thanks, I've been trying for years. And it is hard, and that there is such a toll. So
and
just be kind to yourself.
I was going to say the unsolicited advice around pregnancy, trying to get pregnant is just so unhelpful. I don't think it's unfair to ask somebody if they want to have kids. I don't know. What do you think? I think you have to have a certain relationship with somebody, and it can't just be like at a barbecue, like, hey, you got married. Do you want kids? Like that's different. But just asking a friend, or like, is that part of your plan? And if they want to share with you that they've been trying, they can. Some people don't want to. Some people don't want anybody to know because of the mental toll. But the whole asking people, hey, when are you having kids? Because maybe they're trying to. Maybe they don't want them. That's a whole other can of worms to get into, that we're just expected to have babies. But yeah, so don't ask people if they're pregnant.
Oh yeah. Unless you 1000% know, do not ask.
Unless you see a baby coming out of them. No, unless they have explicitly said to you, I am pregnant. Do not assume, because especially if you're going through fertility treatments or you're trying to make lifestyle changes to get pregnant. And a lot of those lifestyle changes are the same things that you do when you're actually pregnant. So like not drinking, not doing drugs, not eating. Well, I mean, I ate a lot of fast food, but probably would have been better if I didn't.
A healthy lifestyle is what you want to do when you're trying to conceive, which brings up another kind of relationship challenge is when you decide, like it creates a toll in your relationship in that sense, because you might decide that you and your husband or you and your partner should stop drinking, should stop doing drugs if that's what you're doing, or even like
stop eating fast food,
marijuana usage, or like, you know, some people use it to sleep, but they actually has THC in it. So maybe you're trying to encourage your spouse to not use that, just to like, I don't know the research on it. So, but making those changes can be really hard in a relationship. So when you're trying to conceive, just the trying to conceive is hard. And then adding in like lifestyle changes in a relationship, and not just you, but also on someone else.
Yeah.
It's
lot. Hard. It's kind of like foreshadowing into the future of when you're going to have babies.
How are we going to parent
How are we
going
to cope? How are we going to make decisions together? And
yeah,
it's a nice little foreshadow into that.
Yeah, that is true. I was also going to say about when you're trying to conceive, if you are dealing with mental health challenges, like we both were, but I was on medication. So I was on an SSRI, which is something that's very common for anxiety and depression. And it can also cause you to gain weight. So when people are just assuming you're pregnant, like, yeah, I gained 10 pounds, but it was because I went on mental health medication. So when people ask you that and you're like, I'm not in a good place, I'm already on medication, you're assuming I'm pregnant because I've gained weight. Like, I know I gained weight, right? Everyone knows it.
Yeah.
You don't need to point it out. And then when you're doing IVF, the medications they make you take for that,
bloated.
the hormones, you can get super bloated taking that. And so there's situations where people might be trying or in a really hard place trying through IVF or just trying naturally and it's not working. They're in a hard place in life, you know, from work, anything like that. And they might be on medications that just cause you to be more bloated or gain weight. And so it's just, please don't assume.
Also, just don't make comments on people's bodies.
Yes.
Whether it's good or bad. Even a comment like, oh, you look great, that can be very debilitating for somebody. And this is definitely something we're going to do an episode on. It's something that I actually experienced this last week.
Yes.
Somebody making unsolicited comments on the fact that I'm in a larger body now after having a baby. Spoiler, I know.
I'm well aware.
Yes.
Yeah. Me too. Yeah.
I had a baby.
But it's also like all this body stuff also is in pregnancy. So we talk about trying to conceive and how hard that is on your relationship, how hard that is on your mental health. But then there's a whole nother aspect of when you are pregnant. There's the body changes that happen then. For me, I lost weight before I gained weight. So that was that. I was like, I'm hurting my baby because I'm losing weight because I was throwing up so much. So there was that. And like, I'm not big enough. I'm too big. I'm showing too early. I'm not showing enough. Like there's so many different body changes and it's just hard when your body is changing.
Yeah.
And a lot of people struggle with that and that body image issues when they are pregnant. Especially like you might have previous eating disorders. And so
even just disordered eating, like
yes,
all of it.
So that comes up. There's just so much. We could list this forever that affects your mental health.
Make comments on people's bodies.
Yes.
Look at that. Yes. I mean, it's harder because you see a bump and you're like, oh my God, that's so cute. But some people that can be very triggering. Also even saying, oh, your bump is so small or, oh, it's so big. I had comments where people were like, oh, you must be having twins. And Henry came out like 6 pounds, which is quite funny. So I'm like, oh no, that was just me. But even people can be struggling with pregnancy, with gaining enough weight. They're worried their baby's too small. And then you're telling them their bump is so small and cute. And that can be difficult. Not everybody wants to hear your opinion on their bump.
Yeah.
Or their body.
No one actually.
Yeah, nobody does.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember one of my old coworkers when she was pregnant, she said, all people do is they comment on my bump. She's like, can somebody just tell me I look pretty? And I was like, oh my gosh, like she did. And even if she didn't, you can just tell them they look pretty.
Yeah.
Because who cares what you look like?
I mean, I don't know anyone that didn't struggle like mentally at some point in their pregnancy or in their journey of trying to conceive. Like everyone struggles at some point. And sometimes it's just grieving the loss of life that you're going to have. Like not loss of life as in a person, but loss of that
identity
or okay, well, all of my friends, I'm the first to have a baby. Am I going to be able to fit in with these friends anymore? Am I going to lose friends because now I'm having a kid?
Or you're the last of your friends and you're like, they're all
Yes.
going to move on with their life without me.
The kids are all older, then my baby's going to be the younger and they're going to, move on without me. And so there's just so much that's going to happen in that time period in your life that's going to be really mentally challenging. And that is okay, and that's very common to have these struggles, and you are not alone in that.
No. And a lot of the things you've struggled with before pregnancy, like we kind of touched on, body issues will come up in pregnant. When you're pregnant, I remember my therapist told me years before I even tried getting pregnant, she said, when you get to a point in your life when you're going to be trying to get pregnant or pregnant, I highly suggest you either get back into therapy or continue with therapy, because a lot of the issues that you're working with will come back up during pregnancy. So any trauma or loss or conflict in your life, relationship conflicts, they resurface in pregnancy or when you're trying to get pregnant, and they're very hard to deal with because you're already dealing with enough.
So I said before in a previous episode that I was diagnosed with PTSD, and I kind of thought like, hey, I'm putting this work in. Like maybe this will actually be a blessing in disguise that I'm going to be better at pregnancy and trying to conceive and dealing with all the mental health, like cognitive distortions that happen because I am putting the work in. I already have recognized that these things happen. I know how to deal with it. I have these little pocket practices that can help me when I'm feeling anxious and too stressed out and how to calm myself down. And I do think it was helpful, but I still struggled. So even if you are like, I'm a superstar, I've been going to therapy for years, like other stuff that you thought was in the past might still come up and you might have to deal with it again. So if you have a therapist or if you've done therapy, just keep that therapist. Just keep that relationship open because you might need them again.
Yeah, keep that in your back pocket. I mean, we both believe it's always nice to have a therapist that knows you as part of your general health toolkit.
Yes.
But especially when trying to get pregnant or being pregnant and even postpartum, it's very nice to have a relationship with somebody before you need them.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's good for them to see you kind of at your like neutral, so to
your
say.
Baseline,
your baseline. So when they can see you and then now you're trying to conceive and they'll actually be able to notice changes a lot sooner and in a lot more detail and precise changes than you might not be able to recognize in yourself. So that way you actually have like an outward source telling you, you might not recognize it yet, but you are struggling and we should do something, or, you need help. And so to have someone actually watching that, because it's hard if your spouse has never gone through anything or they've never gone through therapy or they've never done any research into mental health and some of these negative thought patterns, they don't know what to look for. They have no idea. They just might think, I don't know.
That's actually something that the psychiatrist I see when I was pregnant, she wanted Jeff to join for a session to go over some of the warning signs to look for and to talk about ways he can support me because I was higher risk of developing any kind of postpartum mental health issues. Well, I already had some, but I was at risk of them worsening. And she reviewed a lot of the things to look out for and things that he can do to support me. And it was very helpful.
Yeah, because he doesn't know what he's looking for. Like, unless you've actively looked into this stuff before, you have no idea. And it's a lot. So
it is a lot.
I don't expect every other spouse out there to just know what it is. So going through it together, or especially, if you're pregnant, even if you're not experiencing any mental health challenges while pregnant, still being prepared in your relationship of what postpartum depression looks like and going through the warning signs and making sure that your spouse also knows is probably a good idea, because that way they can say like, hey, you're actually not doing well. Maybe you need to get help. Like at your 6-week checkup, maybe we should bring this up to your doctor. Like, I'll come with you and maybe we can talk about your mental health. Or
definitely.
So it is good. I like that your psychiatrist recommended that, because I do think that is a very good idea.
Props. Love her. She's great.
Yeah.
She was very helpful. I had we've talked about this, a lot of dark things going on. And I think the main one for me was that women now are talking more about infertility and pregnancy losses, which I love. That is a topic that needs a lot of light shed onto it. And we need to normalize these experiences because they happen a lot. Like the stats, I think, are like, 1 in 4? Yeah,
it is. Yeah,
it's
1 in 4.
Very common. But because this has become slightly more normalized to talk about, I was convinced that it was going to happen to me. And we're going to talk about this later, about the cognitive distortions and like those negative thinking patterns and the thinking traps you get into. That I heard more people talking about that. And then my brain was like, yep, that's going to be you.
Yep, that's me. I'm going to be that person. Exactly. I'm going to be that stat.
Yeah. And I lived my entire life trying to get pregnant and being pregnant, convinced that was going to be me. And it wasn't. So it's just interesting. Your brain is it tricks you.
Oh, it plays a lot of games.
And then on top of all the little tricks our own little brains here, society has all of these rules for women and when they're pregnant, what they can and cannot do. Like you can't eat deli meat, you can't have a hot dog, you can't ride horses, which maybe that one's legit. But it's
stressful though.
All these ways for society to control women and what they do with their bodies. And one thing I learned when I was pregnant is a lot of these, especially food recommendations, aren't actually
legit.
Legit. I was going to say, what's the word?
So, yeah, not legit. A lot of them aren't legit.
Yeah.
Or they're based on very, very old stats, like very, very old research.
Outdated research.
That was not done well.
Yeah.
Either. Like it's outdated, but it was also just not done well. Having taken a stats class in university myself, I know how these studies should, like you need to have a control. You need to have all these other factors dealt with basically. And these studies did not.
Yeah.
And so they couldn't actually tell, was it smoking that was causing this? Was it this factor? Like they couldn't actually tell because they didn't have control. They didn't deal with any of these other outside factors. So they can't say for certain that this caused it. So it just, yeah.
And you read Emily Oster's book, right?
I did,
yeah,
yes.
Very big fans here.
Yes.
So she has 2 books. One is called Expecting Better, and that's for when you're trying to get pregnant. And then another one called Crib Sheet, which goes through the newborn, I think maybe up to like a year.
I think it's toddlers too. Yeah, and newborn and toddlers.
Yeah, and so she's an economist, so she's actually not a healthcare professional.
But
what she does is she works in research. Yes. So she gathers all of the data and she sifts through it and then she just presents it. This is what research says. And what I like about it is that she doesn't tell you what to do. Like I said, she's not a healthcare professional. Even though some healthcare professionals should not tell people what to do, but that's a whole other topic.
Yeah.
What she does is she presents the data and says, this is what research is telling us, and you take this and you make the decision that suits you and your family. So she's not telling you what to do. She's just presenting the data and say, take from it what you like and use this to make your own decision.
She empowers you. She gives you back the power to make decisions on your own life of what you're going to do by presenting you with actual hard facts and data, which I love. Like, so many books out there are telling you, do this, don't do this, do this, don't do this. And it gets so overwhelming and there's so many rules that it's very overwhelming. I didn't know so many of these things in pregnancy that you couldn't do. And I was like, holy crap, I clearly was not prepared for this. And so I read her book and I was like, oh, okay, this makes sense. Like some of the research is very, very old and it was done poorly. And some of it is just like, yeah, there is a small risk, but what is important to you? Like that risk may be worth it for your mental well-being. Yes, do with it what you want. Do with this information what you want.
Yeah.
And yeah, if you have dealt with losses before, maybe you were going to get rid of any 0.0% chance that something is going to affect it. Maybe you are getting rid of all of those. But if you've had a very healthy pregnancy, like for me, I did drink coffee. I mean, I couldn't for a period, but once I could, I missed it so much.
Oh,
and I
was
like,
so
you know
sad.
what? I'm going to have coffee. I miss it. Like for me, it was okay. And I felt the risk was worth it to me, but you just need to be sure in your position, like what risk you're taking and that you're okay with it while you do it. So yeah, love her book, Emily Oster. We will link it in the description for the episode. We'll have a link for her book and what it's called if you want to look at it.
What you just said reminded me, I forgot that when I was pregnant, I was addicted to Tim Hortons ice caps. And there's a Tim Hortons at the hospital I work at. And it's very dangerous because before night shifts, that's when it was like, so good. And I remember I'd be dry heaving in the car. I'd stop at Tim Hortons sometimes. Sometimes I couldn't wait till the hospital. So I'd go through a drive-through and I'd be dry heaving. I'd get that ice cap and take a sip and I was healed. It was healing. It was so good. Oh, I remember that.
And then sugar.
Yeah. Oh gosh. And when I started feeling better, I had to be like, okay, maybe this is not something I need to have every shift. Because there was a point where I could not work without one.
Yep.
it was just so good.
But it made you feel better. So
it made me get through
was
it.
Worth it?
But then when I started feeling better, I was like, okay, maybe having an ice cap. And I didn't get a small. Like, let's be real here.
And you finished the whole thing real fast, I'm
yes,
sure.
I chugged it.
You weren't just having part of it.
Oh, God. No, there was no wasting.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's funny. That just was like a little memory that you brought up.
Yes.
We're going to move on to a little education about some of these cognitive distortions, negative thinking patterns, thinking traps, whatever you would like to call them.
So with education, we just strongly believe that knowledge is power. So the more that you can learn about what's going on, you're just going to feel a lot more empowered to be able to deal with it, what you need to do, if you need to address it at all. You're just going to feel a lot better. If you can actually identify some of these things going on in your head, it kind of takes away the fear of it.
And the stigma to yourself. Like, it takes away the shame that there's nothing wrong with you. Your brain is just tricking you.
Yeah. And so we are not psychologists. So we aren't just like making this stuff up. We actually got the information that we're going to be going through today. We got from the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center website. So we will also link that in the description if you want to read about it some more. We found they just had a very clear way of describing it. And it was very like clear and concise. And so, yeah, we liked the way that they described it best. So we want to give them props for their website.
High five.
It was good.
Yeah. So let's talk about what a cognitive distortion or thinking trap, negative thinking pattern.
Yeah. It's basically just faulty and or inaccurate thinking. So it's just basically
a perception. Your brain is believing or perceiving something that isn't always true.
Yeah.
And you can experience this where it's like not an issue, where, you know, you do something silly, you burn your toast and you're just like, oh,
I suck.
I suck. No, you're like, I'm not a chef. Okay, cool. But if you have that faulty thinking pattern, it can be like, oh, like I'm a terrible person. I can't do anything right. I'm going to drop my baby.
House on fire because I burnt the toast. And what if I put it in longer? Then the whole house is going to go up in flames. And I don't have a carbon monoxide detector.
Yeah. And then, well, I hope you do.
I know. It's a running joke in my family because I freaked out at 2 a.m. one day about carbon monoxide detectors. Anyways. So cognitive disorders really come into play when they actually interfere with your life and you can't forget about it. So if these negative thoughts are coming into your head and they're actually interrupting your life, they are interfering with the way that you are living, with your doing things,
with your
you're not able to just like think about it, whatever your negative thought, I suck, and then it goes away. It's when it actually comes in and it keeps staying and kind of like repeating itself and it causes problems. That's when, getting help is a very, very good idea.
Yeah. And it can lead to anxiety and depression, substance use, insomnia, sleep disorders. It can affect your relationships. So it's actually affecting your life and your ability to live your life. But like we mentioned before, you may not notice this is happening. So
yeah, so we may tell you a few examples of these cognitive disorders and you're going to be like, holy crap, I definitely do this. Because that's when my therapist first went through some of them with me, like there's a sheet. You can get sheets and there's pages of cognitive disorders.
Distortions.
And distortions.
I mean, it is a sign of a mental health disorder, but cognitive distortion, yeah.
Okay, cognitive distortion.
Yeah, thinking trap. I think your therapist used that term.
Yeah.
Thinking trap, I like it.
Yeah, I like it too.
It is a trap.
It is. And but there's pages of different examples of these that you can go through. And I went through and there was a few that I was like, yes, yep, that's me. And it was just that mind-blowing, eye-opening. I was going to, anyways.
Yeah.
So the first one, catastrophizing. So that's when you always think of the worst outcome. So you normally causes you to kind of spiral, but something you are just, regardless of what it is, you think to the very worst, and that is exactly what you think is going to happen, and then you spiral in that worst.
Yeah. So I think we talked about it a little bit before. During pregnancy, something I struggled with was I convinced myself that there was no way this pregnancy was going to end with a baby. I was convinced something was going to happen, and my brain made me believe that there was no chance I was going to have a healthy baby. And it was scary. And that's not what happened. I had a very healthy baby. And one thing that really helped me is telling myself the most likely outcome is a healthy baby in October. And one of my friends actually said this to me when I was spiraling about it. Like, well, like, you know, it's 1 in 4. I'm going to be that one. It's going to happen. Like, I just don't see how I'm going to have a baby at the end of this. And she reassured me, you know, those things can happen and you're very aware of it, especially with your line of work. You see it, but you need to remind yourself the most likely outcome is that you have a healthy baby. And I clung on to that I was like every day, like, I would tell myself the most likely outcome is that I'm going to have a healthy baby. Mm-hmm. And I had to trick my brain back. My brain was tricking me and I had to be like, no, I'm going to trick you.
Yep. Catastrophizing can really take over, like any of these mental distortions. They can really take over your brain. So you have to kind of be like, nope, I'm going to be positive here. I'm going to have these little mantras, these things I'm going to say to myself to help kind of get me in the right frame of mind.
I'm going to identify what's happening. I'm going to think about it and
challenge some of these thoughts.
Yeah. So what's another one this one you did a lot, this next one, jumping to conclusions.
Jumping to conclusions. So there's a couple different examples. So there's mind reading and fortune telling. Mind reading is just when you are assuming what someone else is thinking. So Karlee didn't message me back in an hour and I assumed that meant she hated me, right? Like I'm assuming what she's thinking, even though she's probably just busy with her baby. I'm like, oh, she didn't message me. Oh, what if I offended her in what I messaged?
I'm very offended.
Something like that. Then there's fortune telling, which I did a lot in my pregnancy, but it's basically insisting that you know what is going to happen in the future. And this for me was a lot that with pregnancy, I didn't even think I was going to get pregnant. And so there was this whole idea that I was told when I was like in my early 20s, you're probably going to have a challenge getting pregnant. You have PCOS, endometriosis, like you should have babies now. You're not going to get pregnant. And I basically like clung to that and was like, no, that's what's going to happen in the future. Like I told myself that I was okay not having kids because I was just clinging to this fortune telling idea that I'm not going to be able to have kids. And I clung to that. And that's all I could believe.
You were predicting your future with a thinking trap.
With like outdated information as well. Like it was years ago. Like this between when a doctor told me that and when we started trying was like 8 years. But that one little thing just stuck in my mind. And I all of a sudden was like, nope, I'm never gonna be able to get pregnant because a doctor once said something 10 years ago to me. And I thought I could tell the future. And I could not because then I got pregnant and we had a healthy baby girl. So
she's great.
Yeah.
She's lovely.
Yeah.
Another one that I do all the time, although I'm getting better at it, working on it, are should statements. So my nursing school friends and I would always joke that, well, we would say you're shoulding all over yourself instead of, the other word. So if you're like, oh, I should study for 2 hours. I should eat the salad. I should be going for a walk. I should be feeling baby move by now. Mm-hmm. I should have a bump. I should be smaller. I should be bigger. Yeah, lots of shoulding happening. So just the pressure, the excessive, unnecessary pressure and expectations that you put on yourself can be very debilitating. Like women have enough expectations. We don't need to be putting more unnecessary ones on ourselves.
And some are very unrealistic.
Very unrealistic.
These expectations that we're putting on ourselves, right? We're not being nice when we're doing these shoulding. When we're shoulding ourselves, we're not being nice about it. When you're shoulding it, you're doing like negative things. Like I need to do this for 4 hours. Then I need to clean the whole house. Then I need to do that. Oh, and then I need to,
I should be pregnant after 1 month of trying. Yes. I should. Yep. Yeah. Lots of those.
Yeah. And the last one we're going to go over today is mental filtering. So that's basically choosing to, when you're mentally thinking about something, only looking in a negative lens. So you're ignoring any of the positive stuff that's happening and you're just strictly looking at all of the negative stuff. And I feel like almost everyone does this at some point. And I did this in pregnancy a lot, and my spouse would constantly be like, yeah, but you're forgetting about this part. And this actually happened today, which was a positive. And I'd be like, no, it doesn't matter. Like, this is the negative and this is the bad stuff. And when I was throwing up with hyperemesis, you can go through waves. So you can actually get better when the medication is helping. And so there'd be days that I only dry heaved and I didn't actually vomit. And my good supportive spouse was like, look at you go. Yay. Like, you didn't throw up today. I was like, I still dry heaved. Like, I couldn't find the joy in those little wins that I was having. And it's so important to find those little moments of joy. The mom wins of the day, as we coined them. Mm-hmm. But I just couldn't see anything in a positive. And I was just so negative about everything that was happening. So everything I saw was through a negative lens. I was just negative all the time about everything. So it's this idea of a mental filter, and you really need to try to take a step back and look at everything without any lens, right? Like you don't want to also be too positive because that can be exhausting. I also do that. Where I just
in between.
Right? You're too positive about everything. Like you have to be realistic. And so it's just that, looking at everything through a negative lens.
Yeah, that's a hard one. Especially when you're feeling negative. It's hard to get out of it. And then when your spouse is being positive, you just want to sock them sometimes.
Yeah. There's maybe a few times that I told my husband, I was like, you are not my therapist. Stop trying to be my therapist. Because he was trying so hard to help me. And I was just like, nope, no. I am seeing my therapist. Like, you're my husband. You are not my therapist. Because he'd try to like therapize me. I don't know. Yeah. I don't think that's a word.
Therapize. He's trying to therapize.
He would try. And I was like,
Coin it. Yeah. Speaking of therapy. There's lots of ways to manage these cognitive distortions. Things that worked for us, therapy, specifically within therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, meditation can be helpful, journaling, getting enough sleep, taking care of your body, and then talking to people about it. Maybe not your husband.
We are big fans of talking. And then finding that circle. And so we talk about finding mom friends, but this starts in pregnancy. This starts in when you're trying to conceive. Finding those circle of people who you trust, who you can talk to about these things, it just helps lessen the load. It is.
Yeah. You get out of your own brain instead of stewing over it yourself and spiraling. It's nice to share these with someone. And then maybe if your friend has listened to this episode, they can be like, I think you're fortune telling. No, they can just, kind of help you come back to more rational thought sometimes.
Yeah. You need to be challenged in your thought process, as I believe.
Yeah.
So you need someone that will actually call you out and be like, I think you're doing this right now.
Hold you accountable.
We need to take a step back and look at it, without any of these mental traps, these filters. So that good circle of friends and family around you is important.
Yeah. And if this episode resonates with you, if you find yourself struggling, either trying to get pregnant or postpartum, please reach out for help, either professionally or with a friend. We're big fans of therapy, as we've said.
Yeah. A million times. We'll keep saying it.
Yes.
Everyone should go to therapy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Therapy, if you're out there, please sponsor us. No.
Therapy in general. What is that?
Well, we already called for Snoop Dogg and he didn't come.
No, and we did someone else too.
Amy Schumer.
Oh, yeah, Amy Schumer. Yeah, we love Amy Schumer and her hyperemesis jokes. And we
love her.
Anyways, okay, so our Mom Day mantra today. We've got to the end of the episode, so we like to kind of summarize things, have a nice little mantra. You can always do it as an I statement if you'd like, but we normally say it in more of a third person. Just to... Yeah.
You say it today.
Okay. Just because it crosses your mind doesn't make it true.
It does not.
It's a very simple idea, but it's like once you can fully actually believe this, like take it in, hear it, and believe it, it will change your life. Just because you have this thought that comes in and like, I'm never going to get pregnant, it can also just come in and go. It doesn't have to stay.
And ruminate.
Right? And ruminate. It doesn't mean that it's true just because this thought pops up in your mind. It's just a thought and you can let it go. And oftentimes this thought pops up and all of a sudden we're like, that is true. That is going to be my life. And you hold on to it and you ruminate and you just like spiral. You catastrophize, you fortune tell, you do all of these things, but it's just a thought. It doesn't mean it is true.
Yeah, definitely. And I know we're just finishing the episode, but I forgot to say earlier that medication is actually something that has helped me the most with letting those thoughts go.
Yes.
I didn't think that medication would help with your actual thinking patterns, but spoiler, it does. So not being able to just think something and poosh, send it on its way when it stays and gets stuck and it's like a little hamster wheel in your head. Medication is actually something that was very helpful for me, but also, just try it. Just try, not medication. I mean, just try think this statement. Just because it crosses my mind doesn't mean that it's true. And just see if you can just let it go.
Yep. When you're having some bad thoughts, just think about this and say it to yourself. Maybe say it out loud a few times.
Write it on your mirror, on your forehead. No.
But it made a difference to me too. Just when I finally, just something clicked when I had first heard this idea. It was probably about 2 years ago when I first heard about this idea that just a thought doesn't make it true. And I was like, huh.
As much as your brain tries to
That is
convince you.
life-changing. Like, when
Yeah.
when you can actually believe it, it is...
And the more you think it isn't going to make it more true. Like if you think about...
Just because you think about it 10 times doesn't make it 10 times more true.
Because you tell yourself 10 times a day you're barren doesn't make you barren.
Yes. Yep. It's just a thought.
Yeah. Let it go. Let it go. Let it go. We should start a band. Definitely.
No, we're terrible.
Okay. I think that's our sign. We need to wrap it up. Wrap it up. So if you don't follow us on Instagram, come say hello. We're at the Friendly Moms Club. And if you're watching this on YouTube, like our channel, subscribe to our channel. Actually, that would be even better. Give us that thumbs up. And if you're listening on podcast, then subscribe to our podcast. We'd love that.
Yeah. We have new episodes every Monday.
We've been over this. It's Mom Day.
Oh, yes. Mom Day. Mom Day.
So every Mom Day, we have a new episode. So we'll see you next week. Thanks for joining us.
Bye.
Bye now.